Hi, welcome to Power of the Network. I'm your host, Tim Locker, Vice President of Broadband here at CBM. We've got a great show for you this week. We're going to bring in Mr. Tyler Wesselman. He's the president of MegaKC. We're going to talk all things construction, leadership, and we're going to talk about ESOPs. That's one of the things that we share in common is that his company and ours are both an ESOP. We're very proud of that. So very excited to bring him in and see what I can learn from him. Follow along. Tyler, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you taking the time to come in here and visit with us. It's great to meet you finally personally, so welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here, Tim.
Absolutely. Let's kind of start a little bit with your background. You went to college, pursuing a degree in construction management. Is that accurate? But and then you come right out of school, go right into the construction industry. What was it about just construction in general that you were so interested in?
A lot of it started when I was actually a kid. I loved being around machinery. I actually spent a lot of time with my grandfather on his farm, doing the small things, hands-on. And then obviously my dad, he was in the ready-mix industry, applying concrete to contractors, builders. I spent a lot of time just being around that environment. And, a lot of that led me to just following my passion. And I thought the closest thing, if I'm going to college, construction management, ultimately a business degree in construction. And that led me to where I'm at today.
That's awesome. The one thing that I was kind of similar, like back in high school, or actually even in maybe 8th or 9th grade, my dad and my stepbrother were doing like side jobs. My dad had a construction background years ago, and my stepbrother was older, and he was kind of starting into that contractor space. We were doing all these side jobs, and I spent many a summers, roofing or siding or building garages and those kinds of things. And right out of school, I kind of just went and worked for a contractor. But there's something special about like seeing the results of what you do. And there's probably no better industry to do that than construction.
Absolutely. When I was still in high school, I had the opportunity to work for a local bridge contractor. So kind of tasted some of that early on. Man, it's almost like a team out there, building something that you're going to see for a long time. And a lot of the work I've been involved with is public projects, so city, state, county projects, a lot of infrastructure. But I did that all 4 summers of college.
Okay.
So I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time out in the field and really see where the nuts and bolts come together and make things happen. But what carried forward is, as we do a lot of work here in Kansas City, man, you can't hardly drive within anywhere further than a mile without seeing a project you might have been involved with. And man, that just gives you a good sense of pride.
So I was going to ask, from going from being hands-on, I'm sure you're not out, pouring footings on a day-to-day basis. So do you get that same sort of pride from seeing the projects done now with your team doing it versus, something you actually had your hands in? Has that changed or?
Yeah, it's a different kind of reward or fulfillment. A lot of what I see now is much different than in the past. So I get to see a project from the point where it's just an idea.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different dynamic. That's kind of fun. You're talking to the people that get to use this product in the end. You're starting there and you're getting to follow it through its whole life cycle. So as you look at your team and what they're able to do and how they can help our clients and people build these projects, that's rewarding in a whole nother way. And obviously I still get all the updates and get to hear the fun and not so fun stuff that we got to go through in this industry. But, being employee owned, it tends to lead to, your joy coming from the success of your team and your employee owners and the stuff you get to do with them.
That makes sense. So it's my understanding you started as an intern in 2010?
That's correct. Actually, I talked about working for a bridge contractor. Mm-hmm. I had an internship opportunity with MegaKC at that time, the summer before I graduated college, and I turned it down. obviously several reasons for that.
Sure.
But as I reflected on things going into my last year of school, I called our current CEO, retiring CEO. I called him. I said, "Hey, I've kind of shifted my priorities here. I'd love to explore an opportunity to come to Mega." And oddly enough, 2 months before I graduated, he accepted me as an intern.
Yeah.
And been there ever since.
How long did it take before you realized, like, this is where I need to be?
I've never thought I was in the wrong place. So I feel like since the day I started, I know that might sound a little cheesy, but the reality of it is I never felt like I was in the wrong place. A lot of it started with the connection that I made with a few of the people there as soon as I started.
Yeah.
And as I reflect on that, I mean, that's what's led me this whole time. Create a little loyalty. The employee ownership piece was something that kind of came a little bit after I started. It wasn't the thing that got me there,
Sure.
but obviously it's the reason that I feel like we got a good thing going on.
And we're definitely going to touch on the ESOP piece, because that's one of the challenges that we have, with new people that aren't familiar with it or haven't been in the plan that long and that don't really understand the value of it. How do we sell that as a true benefit? So we'll talk more about that as we move along. When you started, there was roughly 20 employees. Now you're pushing 100. Talk about the change, and I guess not the change, but the growth, of the company from that, from the inside. What did that growth look like?
Yeah, so a lot of what we looked at in the past was how do we get the next big project? How do we not even big project? How do we get the next project? How do we get more of it? But then we started looking at, probably 5 years ago, we actually put together a formal strategic plan, and we actually track it every year. We meet every year, renew this. But a big part of what we realized at that point was that we're not approaching this in the right way. So we looked at our people first, and we said we got to build structure that supports growth. Obviously, at one point we didn't have all the departments. It was pretty well. There was a few gatekeepers, and that's how the whole company operated. But obviously, there's not a lot of capacity there. So as we looked at our people, we said, who do we not have on this team that we need, and who is on this team but they need to be in a different role in several years? And we've really focused on, looking at that, forward-looking succession planning, and really trying to plan around the people and what they're capable of and where they're going to take us. Crews on the job sites, that's where the bread and butter's made.
Yeah.
So we know that's got to be our priority, but also we have to have infrastructure and organizational chart to support that at a business level. So a lot of our growth has been around opportunities have been created because we have the structure in place with the people.
What were some of those key missing roles?
Over the last several years, well, I'll say this: at one point we didn't even have foremen; we had superintendents, and then our skilled tradesmen. We shifted. We added foremen. We've also added some, structure within that group of division managers that support the superintendents out in the field. And then also at one point we had estimators and project managers in the same role. We did not feel like, when we had that in place, we didn't feel like our operations out in the field had the support, because obviously winning the next project is important, just as important as building the current project.
Yeah.
So we separated those two roles, and all this is pretty well operational things. So as we worked through that, we took those steps first. And then as we looked forward, we said marketing and business development, we need some structure around that. That can't be the CEO, or that's pretty well it was as a CEO, trying to lead an effort there, and then expecting everybody in operations or estimating to lean into that and make something happen. So
it's hard to make a marketing person out of somebody that's not got that mind, or their priority. They've got other tasks at hand,
Absolutely. And as we looked at it, we had a VP of operations, which helped us lead the whole operational group. But we still had some boundaries where operations was kind of the reporting structure was not all going through that position. So some of these roles we added to really make some movement. We added, a director of HR, which is, surprisingly, that was our first move, because we said our people are who we've got to figure out a structure and support our people. We made that move first, then came marketing, then came business development, and
that HR is a big piece. Especially the more people you get on board, there's risk and protection, obviously, that you've got to take care of the company, against lawsuits or whatever. Weird things can happen when you're dealing with people and HR, but also just, like you said, taking care of the employees. And it's even more relevant when they're owners, so that's one thing I've learned over the years, that, the HR piece of it is very important, because you've got to protect the company for the employees, for the owners.
Yeah, and we look at that. We don't look at that role as just a compliance piece either.
Yeah,
it's really part of our strategy and our strategic planning going forward. Everybody has the desire to be the best place to work.
Yeah,
we need a person in that seat that's kind of always reminding us as we look forward, how are we going to do that? And
so what does that HR role do from that aspect of, promoting, the value of working here, what we do for the employees and all that thing? What is the outflow of that position?
A lot of what that role is doing currently is really building some infrastructure. I'm going to say that tells our employees we are supporting them. We're trying to develop them. They have a career here that is more than just, hey, we need you to get this job done. We're currently, we're working on this every day, trying to figure out what's the path forward for the people. And really that, this role is going to help us better define that. And as no matter what seat we're sitting in, whether it's our COO, who has, also recently been promoted to the role to take over operations, whether it's them or a division manager or our director of pre-construction, our goal is that our people are always being heard through this person, and they're also kind of our guiding light in how we take some next steps in building our people out.
Do you have different, skill training or other type of courses and things that you do for the employees?
Yeah, so we have different programs right now. This is part of our growth strategy is developing, I'm going to say, training plans for every role. It's really started with project management. It's going into superintendents, and then craft on the job site. We actually are reigniting our apprenticeship program.
Okay.
Through association called ABC. They're one of our merit shop partners and organizations that we use, and they have training programs for the trades. On the job training is obviously an everyday thing. Yeah. I value that most personally. That's where any of my experience has been the most valuable. But
is it a union shop or no?
No.
Okay.
We're non-union. I can get into that later too with the ESOP situation.
Yeah, I'd like to understand that dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. So we view it as a huge benefit. Being a merit shop, non-union, allows our craft to participate in the ESOP as well. They're not signatories, so they are able to, be employee owners and get the benefit of what we call the long-term retirement plan. It's our path to freedom. That's one of our core values, and it's freedom to do the job the way you need to do it, but it's also freedom in every day to live our lives the way we need to live them because we have financial freedom.
No, that's great. Back to the structure. So as you kind of maybe took a flat, the hierarchy. What is it called? Damn it,
organizational.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. So you go from a more of a flat org chart to more of a pyramid type, more different. As you add those levels, from maybe it's just perception, but you add those different levels. Do people feel like there's more growth opportunity when that transitioned?
Yeah, and you said flat. Actually, what I feel like it was very straight up and down, where we had ultimately kind of a straight. Well,
Okay.
We didn't have enough depth, is what we'd say.
Okay.
By adding departments, we kind of branched out, allowing people to kind of own what they specialize in.
Yeah.
It has created a lot of vision for opportunity. The biggest thing I see that comes from this is people do want to own, I'm going to say, their department or their role. But as long as you're playing in it, it's hard for them to really do their job the best they can do it. And this is probably a growth opportunity for me in particular, that it's not necessarily trusting people, it's trusting yourself that, you've got the right person here.
Yeah.
And you're ready to, hand this off. We kind of went through phases as I worked through the organization and handing off, things in operations that I came through operations and estimating. So
Okay.
Operations was the first thing that I handed off, and that was to our COO is fully accountable for the whole operation now. And then estimating and sales, pre-construction, that's been the last piece. And obviously that's an important part of any business,
Yeah.
but handing that off. But what I've seen is that teams can actually do a lot better when you get out of the way. And even our outgoing CEO, he's got the same mentality, and I think it's allowing us to start to take off here.
Yeah. That's one of the things that, me as a, younger leader, I guess, in terms of, how long I've been working for the team, but trying not to be the bottleneck. It's nice to know everything, but you don't have to make every decision, So if everybody's waiting for you to make a choice on something, you're just slowing down the whole process. But what kind of things, like when you say to get out of the way, what give me an example of something that you had to stop doing?
Yeah, let's just go to example for operations. I had this feeling that every contract that went out the door, subcontract or commitment went out the door. There was a little bit of like, should I be reviewing this? Should I be approving these? I mean, this is several years ago, but that's one step to say, hey, these guys and gals are employee owners. They're making the interest, the right choice based on, what they believe is best for the company. And we have some parameters that we've defined now. Defining that SOP or standard operating procedure and what the metrics are around that is probably what we, some have said internally that some things were tribal knowledge.
Yeah.
And trying to define those so that we can empower people to really do their job well is probably what we focused on. So, that's just an example of like, hey, I don't have to review every contract. There's different ways to check these.
If something really goes downhill, you can circle back and say, okay, what did we do? Coach them through it and not make the same mistake.
And, and then on the estimating side, as we've gone through history here, we have a good, hey, before any proposal goes out, we sit down as a team, we review it so that we've got to, we cover our risk, but also meet the expectations of our clients. And, handed that off probably a year ago, and things have taken off. And
so your estimators, is that your sales team?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, okay, because I hear that term a lot in the construction industry, but essentially that's your sales arm.
That is correct. So, that arm, business development and estimating or sales are really two different things in our eyes. Our business development department does not propose on the projects. They help us find the work, support the pursuit, make connections, get in front of our clients, make sure we know their expectations and needs. With that, it allows, then we get it to estimating to where it's not necessarily a motivation to get the job just for purpose of revenue. We want to get it the right price that meets our business plan. And, with that, business development also leans into client experience in our company. So client experience is a big piece for business development, and that's on ongoing jobs. They're actually part of our customer check-in so that we can get feedback for ongoing jobs that's independent of the operation that's running it. So we get kind of unbiased feedback.
So doing so much work in the municipal space or government space infrastructure, Most of that stuff's all got to go out to bid. So you're always competing on price. What are you able to do to differentiate, yourselves and your company and your work and battle that price?
That's the age-old question. We've been, I guess the first approach is if we're competing in that manner where it's low bid gets the contract, we're going to serve our clients well on that, so our reputation will feed to other opportunities down the road. But even with that, we also focus on, work here that is not easy. Even if it's low price, we want to be more qualified. We want clients to have high expectations on the jobs we're on. If the expectations are low or the scope's kind of fundamental, we're probably not the right one for the job. We can do it, obviously, but we're setting ourselves up to handle projects that are more technical. Yeah, they have more logistical challenges, and we'll compete well on the price side. But we hope that opportunity leads us to doing well on that and earning our reputation that we've earned over the last 34 years here in Kansas City.
What's the percentage of your repeat business versus new?
That is a loaded question too. I'd say I would say that our repeat business is, and I'm gonna make up a number if I even said it. So I'm gonna
higher or lower?
Yeah, it would probably be. 50% of our work is repeat customers, whether that's in the last 2 years or in the last 10.
Well, some of those cities aren't spending that kind of money on, every year, some of them. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sitting here today in Kansas City out on kind of the east side of town. We've built a project probably within a mile of here. So, for the city of Kansas City, we built them for, all the suburbs around here. So, I would say we've built more than one project for nearly every one of our customers.
Does your wife ever get sick of you just saying, hey, we did that as you're driving through town?
Yes. She's like, you're going to wreck us. You're going to wreck the car. Family's in the car. We got to, pay attention. Yeah. No, she actually, it becomes part of the culture at home a little bit, but she also reminds me, hey, you got to be here when you're here. Yeah. So I thank her for that.
Do you have to travel much?
No, we actually, since we're focused here in Kansas City, a lot of our market right now is within about 90 miles of downtown. Yeah. But we do go further than that on occasion, obviously with the right partner or the right client that we, want to team up with, we can go out there. But most of our people are getting home every night. And, if I do travel, it's for work conferences or opportunities to develop myself and anybody on the team. Yeah. So fortunate.
What kind of things do you do for your own self-development?
Well, right now I'm actually enrolled in a leadership program. It's actually a CEO leadership program for ESOPs.
Okay.
And I'm doing that in July, and then I've got for a week, and then I've got another session in December. So you kind of have a
What's the course? Who puts it on?
It's sponsored by NCEO, but it's the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And they've been doing it since the early 2000s. So heard great things about it. I've actually, got some referrals from some people that have been in it, and it's only 20 people a year.
Okay.
So you build kind of a peer group, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's more focused on not the technicalities or the I'm gonna say the financial leadership and those kind of things. It's more around being a true leader, leading the team and the people. So that's one of my
that's exciting.
First big steps here in the next year. But
what do you hope to learn?
Honestly, I hope to learn how to, I'm going to say, lean into the people, support the people, the employee owners of our company, and really take my operational experience, my technical experience, and develop that in more of a, I'm going to say, leadership support around the people that actually are doing the work.
Yeah.
And, become I want to say, a more influential leader. Our company has always had leaders that are technical savvy, do the work well. And I still want to be that person, but I think this is an opportunity to build relationships, learn how to build relationships that'll last a long time internally and externally. So I really hope to learn a bit more about myself. And
I think that's one thing too that that I've recognized is that we're all here for a different reason. Everybody's got a different reason they get up and go to work. It could be financial, it could be the freedom you talk about, it could be a list of different things. But I think it matters. Getting to know the people, understanding why they're here. You've got to have rules and you've got to have policy, but you also have to have that intimate relationship with everybody too. So that's just one thing I've noticed. I think it matters a little bit. So we did an exercise last summer, been a while back, but just had the group together from one of our planning meetings, and we just literally sat around the conference room, and I asked that question. Why are you here? What's important to you? And if you want to share, great. If not, we're not going to force you to. But from a personal aspect, what matters to you most? And everybody went around the room, and it was interesting how much we all learned about each other too. So it gave us a little different perspective.
Yeah, and as you say that, we're kind of we're transitioning from when I started to where we have fewer people to get more, have more people on the team. And as we look at that, we got to stay in touch with the people on the team, the people that have as I carry the vision forward, we got to be able to touch people in a way that they're motivated by where we're going, and that's why they're on the team. One of the things we did similar to you is we actually, we all took certain tests that tell us our strengths, and then we had sessions with our teams where we sat around as a group and we learned, hey, where are our strengths leaning into how we react to things, how we manage things. Yeah. And one of the biggest takeaways that I think we get from that sometimes is as you look at your people, they all have good intentions, or their strengths might come across as not a weakness, but a deterrent to what we're trying to do. But actually, if we use each individual's strengths well, it'll lead us in good direction. And the camaraderie improves as you just openly talk about it. And you're like, I know why you're doing that. Here's what we can do. Yeah. CBM is a manufacturer's rep based right here in Kansas City. We've got territory where we cover from Iowa all the way down to Texas. We cover specifically 3 different market segments: utility, commercial industrial, and broadband communications. CBM is structured differently. We're an employee-owned company. We're ran as an ESOP. That allows us to do business differently. We can cross lines of markets. We can put our people where they need to be and really have expertise in the right place. That's what makes a difference, for our customers and for our manufacturers. If you think we can help you with a product line in the Midwest, look no further than CBM. Find us right here at cbmrep.com. So let me ask you this then. Do you think it's better to highlight somebody's strengths or try to make improvements where they're weak? The answer is highlight their strengths. And
it's a challenge. That's probably one of the biggest challenges, I feel like, too.
It is. And we've even had some partners come in and help us facilitate this discussion. And what we find is sometimes strengths lead to blind spots or places where those strengths have kind of taken us down the wrong path. And we try to focus on that more than looking at weaknesses. Just, hey, why are we not on track? Well, it's probably because, being an executor or, somebody that isn't really strategically, doesn't think strategically as much, their execution strengths are pulling them in a little bit of the wrong direction. We just need to get realigned on where we're going and the why behind it. But
and sometimes I wonder too if is it a strength or is it a comfort? For example, let's just say we've got a sales guy that's really good on these 5 lines, but not so much on these 5 lines. Obviously, if he's doing really good selling one thing, he's got some good strengths in sales. So is it a comfort thing that he's maybe not comfortable with these other products, or what really is it that we're missing? So obviously we want him to do really good with the things he's doing really good with, but how do we, what's the strategy for bringing up the other side?
Yeah, a lot of times I look at that. Obviously capacity has to be a thing. You can't just
you can't do everything.
You can't do everything. So sometimes the way I look at that is maybe we need to lean into that person's strength and keep them on that side of the line and make sure we're using them.
Figure out a way to let them do more over here and offload this.
Mm-hmm. And bring in, shore that up with maybe another person or a different person and their role, maybe shifting it to where they're taking some of that off their plate and we all end up more productive. But, that's obviously finding out what strengths each person has. The strengths we kind of focus on are, this is several examples. There could be 50 of them, but responsibility or accountability, like there's different things that drive people to get stuck in certain tasks or certain sectors of our business. And we try to identify those so that.
Like what would be an example?
Some people, obviously they never want to miss a deadline, so they might rush. Their strength might be responsibility and make sure it's done. Well, they want to triple check everything. Well, maybe we need to shift some roles here where they can handle that strength and capacity and not, ultimately overburn themselves out or end up not getting done on time because they're taking too much. It's just as we look at it, there's a good reason certain things happen, and how we shift that among the team and share the load, or like we said, if somebody's better at something, let's use them for that more than we have in the past, and really, move responsibility around.
Back to the growth a little bit, and I've always heard there's a couple of different plateaus in business where you'll stall out at different levels. The numbers really don't matter, but where you'll plateau. Do you feel like because you changed that structure, is that what really released that plateau and made the growth happen?
Yeah, I've been asking this question internally for the last 6 months. We built a structure ahead of the growth. Mm-hmm. And, I can't pinpoint any one thing that is allowing us. I mean, we felt like over the last 3 or 4 years, we were building a structure that allowed us to handle growth, but we were doing it in advance. So it was obviously, it created a little bit of pressure or stress on just, well, how is this year going to be a good year if we're building something and paying for something that's going to get a return down the road? I do think that all of that has led to the trajectory we're on as a company right now. But I can't pinpoint one specific item within all that investment that is leading to this success and growth.
Yeah, just a general change in movement.
Yeah, I mean, our market is obviously, construction industry is interesting right now. It's in high demand. A lot of the stuff we've always done, we're more successful than we have even been in the past. But, as I look at the structure we built, we're actually able to execute in certain facets better because, we're not relying on one or two people to really drive the ship. We've got a whole team to do it. And when we do have challenges come up, we're able to handle them better and really focus on our clients. That message is started about 4 years ago, and I really think it's taken off. So
how risk adverse are you in terms of, you mentioned like, okay, we're going to invest in this so it pays off in the future. How do you balance that risk and still protect the employees, protect the company, protect the ESOP? How much are you willing to gamble on those future payoffs?
I'm doing a little more each year. I was probably more conservative in the beginning than some of my team. I'm more willing to gamble as I'm not even going to call it gamble. I'm
sure you've got a
plan. We've got a plan. So we look at the next 2 years in pretty good detail. And that's developed a lot over the last 3 or 4 years. A lot of what we look at also is a strategic discussion with our board of directors. We have a couple of external members on our board which has been a big change for us as a company. But their expertise, their market outlook, their experience from where they came from, and they bring that in and help us kind of, look outside of our own walls.
Yeah.
Allows me personally to have more comfort in what we're trying to do.
It's not just all on your shoulders.
You got some other experience to relate it to, and obviously tracking it and having a plan around it allows you to pull some levers. If something goes off plan, we're gonna change and pivot, and we know we're gonna have to pivot.
Yeah.
But right now, things have kind of been moving as planned.
Good.
So, there's a lot of comfort in it because our team also believes in it.
Yeah.
If I was the sole person trying to push something and we didn't have buy-in from our team, it'd be a different story.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Let's kind of move into the ESOP a little bit. As you know, we're also an ESOP. Ours was established in '88. And that was actually, an exit strategy for, one of the former principals, John Marietti. So, the employees bought the company through the ESOP, took a loan and bought the company to buy Mr. Marietti out. Went through the whole, paying off the loan process. And, now it's, fully funded ESOP plan. It's what drives our culture, and it's an awesome retirement for us. But talk about how yours was established, the reasons behind it, and what it's done for your company.
Yeah, MegaKC was a general contractor founded in 1992. Through the early 2000s, construction obviously continued to evolve, but the CEO at that time decided that his succession plan was to obviously transition himself out, and we actually became 56% ESOP. So the employee owners took out a loan, bought 56% of the company, and 3 other individuals own the remainder of the company. Since then, in 2018, the last 2 shareholders, our stakeholders for the company, sold their shares, and we became 100% employee owned in 2018. We were formerly known as Mega Industries Corporation, and we rebranded as MegaKC, and as part of that transition to 100% ownership, and that's what people know us as of now. It was always actually part of our email address. So
really?
It wasn't like a new name by any means.
Just formal.
Yeah, just formal. So, I feel like as we look back, employee ownership and being an ESOP has really been the driving vision around what we do.
It's a pretty common, strategy where, the original founder, time to retire. It's difficult to sell a company like that. There's a lot of things to do. And so, it's a really good exit strategy for somebody that's kind of started and built up a business, so it's pretty common. Ours was, similar fashion. So it's not uncommon to form an ESOP, like that. So
no, honestly, as I look at people that I have relationships and their businesses, and I talk about this because ESOP's a lot to absorb as you look at all the dynamics and the technical pieces that have to be handled through it, and a transition like that it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
But as I look back in the experience that I personally have built and our company's built over the years, there's a lot to go through there that if you're ever going to become an ESOP, it does help to have some peers that have done it and lean into those people.
Yeah.
And, I look at even my dad being a partial owner in a business, if I knew what I knew now, I'd recommend him become an ESOP. It's a great succession plan. And, you continue to work there even if you sell the business. So,
what's interesting, just recently, a lot of political stuff we don't need to get into, but they were, talking about, jobs and, hiring people. That's a whole nother challenge, et cetera. But one of the things that they said was kind of the most important in terms of, keeping and retaining employees is that they have stake in the game. And that's really what an ESOP does when you boil it down. That's what you do. You've got stake in the game. You've got a part ownership. One of the things that our message has been for years, act like an owner. And, basically that means, do the right thing for the customer, be responsible. We're not going out and spending a bunch of money on expenses just for frivolous, for fun. We're responsible. But one of the challenges also that comes with that is when you say act like an owner, well, there's an org chart for a reason too. That not everybody in the company can make the same decisions that Marla can, for example. There's a chain of command for a reason, but so sometimes that gets misconstrued when we say act like an owner. But I think you get the message. So
yeah, and we lean into that. Kind of say, we got some shirts that say this, but on it because we own it. As we look at that, everybody needs to own their role.
Yeah.
We all got different decisions to make every day to support that. So kind of understanding that just because you have, shares in this company is not the same. You don't get to make every business decision for the business. So, we all kind of execute on our roles as an employee owner. That's going to create success. And, obviously, hopefully drives culture and it's contagious. And the benefit, obviously is a long-term benefit that, I still got a long road ahead of me, but, I hope that as I go to retirement one day, I can tell a lot of good stories of other employee owners that have had the path to freedom.
Yeah.
Through MegaKC.
Do you do like an annual meeting around the ESOP every year? We just finished ours actually last week. So
ours is next Friday.
Yeah.
And we wait to do it in the summer a little bit because we have a lot of interns.
Yeah.
We have 6 interns this summer, and we like to allow them a little piece to see a piece of this and what that's all about and the culture around it. We bring all employee owners to an event to announce the new stock price, usually have a message around a special topic that's important to us, and really try to build some camaraderie around it and hopefully be celebrating most of the year.
Yeah. And it's like I said before, it's one of those things it's been a challenge for us because it takes a little while to see the benefit. We've made some changes where now new hires are directly into the plan. So, it used to be, a year waiting period to be into the plan. Then it was 6 months. We just took that away. Because if you started, you start in February and have to get all the way through the year and then do another year to be eligible, then you're on your 3rd year before you ever even see a benefit from it, So people would be like, yeah, you talk about this, but like, where's the beef, Mm-hmm. So we've eliminated that. So even if now you start in November, next year when it's all done, you're still going to get a contribution. Now it's a smaller percentage because you worked 2 months out of the year, but at least you're quicker to see that benefit. So that's one of the changes that we've made, in the past few years that's, I think, helped some of our new people, see the benefit a little bit better.
Yeah, we've done the same thing. We used to have a 500-hour requirement to get a contribution in a year.
Yeah.
Now there's no requirement. You get a full contribution for every bit that you worked in the first year.
Yeah.
And then obviously we have a vesting schedule that's 6 years.
Yep, we're on the same.
So,
yep.
And we are,
do you have much turnover?
I would say, I'm going to knock on wood, but we've had great,
pretty good.
We've had great results over the last year and a half, 2 years. Obviously, things changed in 2020, 2021 a little bit with COVID coming, and there was a lot of dynamic to work through, and just, everybody, had some point of views that, opportunities came about and different things. So we had to, adjust, pivot, but our focus, that we've had for the last 2 or 3 years is really, I feel like it's paying off, and we continue. Like I said earlier, Director of Human Resources is here to help support us in making great decisions that support our employee owners and give them a true best place to work mentality. And, obviously financial goals are important for an ESOP. and those results should feed to some of the success with turnover. But it can't be the only thing.
Yeah.
So that's super important to us.
Yeah. It's, I feel like there's a lot of construction companies that are kind of leaning into that ESOP. We've got a local sign control traffic company, that's near me, and, they're an ESOP. There's a big outfit across the street that does a lot of road type work. They're an ESOP. And you see the retention of the people and just the whole different atmosphere versus, like, for example, another drilling contractor that I know recently just sold his business. And like, it was a mass exodus after, they sold the business, new people bought them, and everybody's like, nah, we're out. Whereas, an ESOP, you've got that planning in place. So as you're changing the guard, if you will, recession planning, it's built right into that process. So I think that's a very big piece for us as we're handling our manufacturer relationships, with the different lines. There's safety for them in that we have that recession plan, if you will. So if Marla left and everybody quit, we're no value to those manufacturers. So there's some built-in benefits there as well.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, I feel like ESOPs, they purposely have to communicate better. You communicate where you're going. Internally, we have kind of an open book mentality. Whether that's financials or what's the strategic plan, what are we trying to do? What that does is it creates stability around, hey, we're not working for one person, and if that one person isn't here, this company falls apart. We've got to. This thing is kind of a trough for all of us. We've got to fill it up, and it should give externally a lot of comfort for our clients and people we do business for. Really, ESOPs, the first transition and getting to becoming an ESOP is kind of the build out phase. But once they're stabilized, I think history tells us that ESOPs are a good business structure and really lead to a lot of success for a lot of people. I mean, in Kansas City in particular, I have a lot of pride in our ESOP network around here.
Yeah.
We're part of several organizations, ESOP organizations, and you no matter where you go in the country, I mean, we're represented well at all those conferences. So, naturally, it's a big part of the culture here in Kansas City.
Yeah. All right, I want to talk about your core values. I wrote them down here so I don't forget. But safety, quality, community, and freedom. You kind of touched on the freedom a little bit before, but let's wrap it up here and just kind of finish on your core values and what they mean to you.
I mean, construction safety. I mean, there's no given there. We have this motto of safety over everything. So no matter what you're doing, we're going to do it safe. Everybody's going to go home safe to their families. We feel like, if we ever obviously that's the
How do you handle a risk taker? Like, I think about, my son's in construction and residential mostly, but like, I know he's taking risks that he shouldn't. How do you handle a knucklehead like that like, okay, we can get you up on that roof, but we're going to do it safely?
You got to start day one with, I'm going to say the message you got to put out is that there's no tolerance for it. Obviously, as we look at us as a business, I mean, there's a lot of risks we take every day in our people, and just all translate to all the people out there. But, one of the big things is our people that have been here for a while, they have to see something, say something, and not support any, I'm going to say, risk taking.
Yeah.
Safety is not a thing you can sacrifice in a business. Somebody doesn't go home at night. I mean,
that's a big
I
deal.
never want to have that call, and I know nobody in our business does.
Yeah.
So, we actually just got our whole program evaluated by our insurance broker to try to make sure we're focused on the right priorities within our safety program, and that's just one example of a bunch of different efforts that we're trying to,
Yeah.
as we grow, it doesn't become more important, but it does. I mean, it's always, it's got to be the most important thing all the time. So safety over everything. We start every meeting with that discussion, like a lot of contractors do. We lean into that. As we look at quality, I mean, if we're not putting in good work, our reputation will be shattered. We don't travel the country right now. We do go outside this market a little bit, but we have a lot of focus here locally.
Yeah.
So we can't burn bridges. We can't put in poor work. And if we do, whether it's our client or our engineering partners or our vendors or subcontractors, all those partners in business, the word gets around, and it's kind of what we're founded on, is just putting in quality work, and it's going to drive to success. It's going to lead us to success.
Yeah, for sure.
We lean into that. And then as we look at community, it's kind of a natural piece because Kansas City's home. It's in our name. We build the stuff we drive on, the water we drink, the water that goes down the toilet. I mean, all of that is part of the infrastructure that we work on.
Yeah.
So it's natural for us to look at community and say, hey, we got to take care of the place where we work, live, and play. And, and that leads us to kind of the philanthropy side of things, charitable side of things. We have a committee internally that focuses on our efforts centered around, the actual donations we make with monetary value, but also the hours our employees will donate and put back into the community.
Yeah.
So, that one hits close to home for a lot of us. And, it sounds easy to say, write a check for this but the efforts that go into organizing that stuff so your company shows up and people have the opportunity, because people are willing to do it. They just need a little guidance at times. And,
you make it easy for them to do it. Yeah, that's the key.
Absolutely. We look at every year, hey, financially, this is how the year went, and a portion of that always we judge our next year's contributions based on that. Even if we don't have a successful year, we still got to look at that and decide how we're going to give back to our community.
Yeah, it's just part of the plan, part of the budget.
It's got to be.
Yep. Freedom. You kind of touched on that, but we'll wrap up on that. Yeah,
I mean that's kind of the almighty ESOP piece. I hope that we have all kinds of freedom stories. And as we look at freedom, it's financial freedom, freedom to make decisions, do the job the way you need to do it for the ESOP. What I look at when I look at ESOPs, we have an economy that's probably can be viewed as good in some eyes and bad in others. I hope that, living our lives through the freedom of the ESOP, financial freedom, allows people to, bridge that gap. Yeah. And support all, no matter where you're at in the economy, support all people that are trying to change their legacy and honestly support what they want to do in their lives. I mean, work isn't the only thing that is important to all of us. I mean, it can become a thing if you let it be, but a lot of us got things. We all go home to our families, and honestly, we want freedom today and down the road. Yeah. And if we don't plan for it, which an ESOP does, we may not, all that would be for naught. So, the freedom piece is probably, there's a lot of people that are approaching retirement, and we're going to soon have some stories to tell, which is probably the most exciting part to me. We actually celebrate, I'd like to say we celebrate millionaires in the ESOP, and hopefully have a whole bunch more of those. Yeah. In the near future.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I can't thank you enough for coming in. I've learned a bunch from you today, so it's great to meet you, and thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Just want to say thanks again to Tyler for joining us on the show today. I feel like I learned a ton from him. It's great to hear about his journey, how he got, not only where he is, but how he got to where he is now, moving up through the corporate ranks. I feel like I learned a ton about ESOPs and some of the different strategies and some of the, the direct benefits to the employees and to the team. So it was a great conversation. Thanks again. I appreciate you coming in. Thanks for watching Power of the Network. Please give us a like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, we'll see you next time.